Hello, everyone. Good evening. Om Shanti. Welcome again. So good to have you here for another session on the spiritual powers, again with Angie, Sister Angie O'Toole, who'll be unpacking two powers with you tonight. Uh, Discrimination, I think, and discerning. And so, why we have concentrated on these spiritual powers, because in the original state of the soul, in our original spiritual state when we were fully aware, our perception was of ourselves as a spiritual being in a body having a human experience. And over time, what has happened, as happens to most things, the essential power of that awareness faded a bit, and we began to see and think that other things could make us happy, and our eyes looked to the external world. And if you like, we call that first the perception of ourselves as a spiritual being, and then the deception we sort of morphed into, that it was more fun to make external things our supports. And so we got deceived into what was a satisfaction from greed or attachment, or how we could get things with anger. And so what it was, it took us away from our spiritual perception of ourself. And why we want to have a human experience. It's delightful. And in that human experience, we have exchange with others. We have exchange with situations, but they involve others, other people. And so our spiritual powers are to enable us to regain that harmony in our relationships, that peacefulness in our discussions, or our thinking, or our acting. And so that's why for us these spiritual powers are so valuable. They put us back to an awareness of ourself. They give us back self-confidence and understanding of how things work when we think in a particular way. And so I'm really, really pleased that we're doing this series, and that Angie also agreed to share with us, because this is an area that she has thought a lot about and has been quite an important part of the way she teaches. And so I think we have a very valuable instrument, as we say, with us this evening to share with us all these two particular powers. And then next week we'll unpack, as they say, another two. So I will now invite Angie onto the screen. Welcome, Angie, who's been teaching now for a long time and been a great help in this retreat center for many years as well. Welcome, Angie.
So thanks, Jackie, for that welcome and that introduction to tonight's topic or topics. And for those that were with us last week, you'll recall that we started this series of spiritual powers last week, with the first power absolutely necessary to start with, the power we explored and unpacked last week, which was the power to withdraw. And as we know from a spiritual perspective, withdrawing is not running away from or avoiding, but moving my attention away from the outside world, turning my attention to my inner world, getting in touch with the deepest part of myself as a spiritual being. So for those that were with us last week, I do hope you've been thinking about that during the week and applying that power to withdraw, because meditation is a natural vehicle to be able to put the power to withdraw into practice, but also introspection, reflection, where I'm examining myself and spending time with myself allows me some distance from what's going on all around me, and I can tap into the strength that exists within me. So it's a starting point, the power to withdraw, and really it's the springboard to be able to start bringing these other powers into my life. And with all of these powers, and I'm pretty certain I did mention last week that each one of these has a spiritual application, but also there's a worldly distortion, if you like. So the two powers we're going to look at tonight is the power to discern and the power to decide. And as Jackie mentioned before, this first of these, the power to discern, is sometimes referred to as the power to discriminate. And discriminate isn't an evil word at all, but it's in the world, discrimination is seen to be an evil or a hurtful or a harmful thing to do, and it's the context that sometimes this way of using the word is that we're segregating and avoiding, leaving people out, marginalising, all of those things. But actually, discrimination or discernment from a spiritual sense has a very elevated, a higher application. And that's what we're going to firstly explore tonight. But before we start to do that, I'd like to just touch on a couple of things that Jackie mentioned earlier. And she mentioned, that there was a time when we really, as human beings, it existed or lived our lives, our human life, with the awareness that we were spiritual beings having a human experience, if you like. So that knowledge of ourselves as spiritual beings and living our lives from that position. And for most of us, it hasn't been that way. In fact, I'd suggest for all of us, it hasn't been that way for such a long time that we've thought of ourselves as physical beings, living our lives and affected by the things around us and our memories and our concerns about the future. But our identity has been caught up in the physical. And as Jackie mentioned, actually when you start to think of yourself and know and understand yourself as a spiritual being once again, it becomes very obvious that physical identity, or mistaken identity, if you like, that we've held for so long, and all of us have done that, is such a deception, such an absolute deception. Because when I think of myself as a body, I'm limited to the things of just the body. And when I'm able to change that thinking and that awareness back to awareness of myself as a spiritual being, as a soul, it opens up a whole new world of possibilities. And that includes being able to bring these spiritual powers to life in my life and to start to apply them. So let's start to explore this power to discern. And to know myself as a spiritual being takes some understanding. And actually, Raja Yoga, the practice of the Brahma Kumaris, helps us with knowledge that helps us get to know ourselves in a spiritual sense once again. And this knowledge is so absolutely necessary as a step towards understanding myself. So firstly, to know that I'm a spiritual being, I'm not this physical identity. It's probably the biggest secret in the whole world, because most of the world doesn't think of themselves that way. So when I start to understand that that's the case, I'm a soul, I'm a spiritual being, I live my life, I express and I experience through this physical body, but I'm not this body. I'm the light within. I'm the consciousness. I'm the living light that gives life to this body. And there'll come a time when this body will finish, but I, the living light, will continue on as an eternal being. So this is the first aspect of spiritual knowledge, Raja Yoga knowledge, who I am. And next week, when we're exploring further on powers and we move to the next two powers, we'll look at the second part of this is not just who I am, but who I belong to. When I know myself as a spiritual being, this is the first part of this knowledge, Raja Yoga, in application in my life, knowing myself as a spiritual being, as a soul. Next week, we'll start to explore another aspect of this knowledge, which many of you have already heard, I know, is who do I belong to? So if I'm a soul, who do I belong to? Who's my spiritual parent? And that's a very important second part of this knowledge that really allows me to get in touch with the very best of myself that might not be so clear for me, because we've traveled for a long time in the awareness of ourselves as a physical being and in this state of what we call body consciousness. And the more we've moved along in body consciousness, it's like there's been a disconnect to our true identity, and we've become more and more distant, more and more almost in a state of amnesia of our true identity and of the wonder that exists and power that exists within us. So being able to connect and look at ourselves through the lens that the Supreme Soul does enables us to see all of the wonder that's within us that might not be so evident, is difficult to see. So as we start to explore, so the power to discern means that I can see very clearly what's going on. And with that very clear vision, understanding what's going on, I then know what to do. So let's think about this for a minute, being able to see clearly. Because often we'll find that we won't see situations so clearly, we won't see truth. Our vision, or our spiritual vision, or our non-physical vision, if you like, is distorted and obscured by things like conditioning, things like our opinions and attitudes, things like being influenced and affected by the opinions and attitudes of those around us. Things like holding on to certain values and belief systems that maybe don't serve me, but in an effort to keep paddling through this life that can sometimes be so difficult, I will hold on to old values and beliefs because it's what I know. So let's just think about this for a moment. If I have very strong opinions and attitudes, they will cloud truth. So I may not be able to see what's in front of my nose, so to speak. I'll be looking at it through a lens that's maybe of my own making, but maybe of somebody else's making, my parents or those who have a strong influence on me in my development stage and beyond. I may find that those, if you like, conditioning that have created my attitude and my opinions makes it very difficult for me to see clearly what's really going on. Back a step. And thinking about this conditioning that sometimes affects us, that where we will be influenced by our strong opinions and attitudes that have come from wherever they've come from our parents, from things that have happened in our life. And these sort of things can really cloud my vision. And when we're talking vision, I'm not talking about physical vision. Of course, that's also an aspect of it, but we're talking about our inner sight. So if I've got a very strongly held opinion, it's going to skew what I'm seeing in one way or another, and it will distort truth. So the first question to ask myself in any given situation is, what is my attitude to what's going on, to this situation, to this relationship, to this person? Am I influenced by a strong opinion or a strong attitude towards what's going on? Because if I am, then there's no question I'm going to have a distorted vision on what's going on. Other things that can really distort my clarity is emotions. And emotions come often on the back of these strong opinions and attitudes, because I'll notice that I'll be thinking a lot. I think we talked a little bit about this last week when we were talking about the power to withdraw, that if I'm thinking a lot, that's going to have an impact on my ability to see clearly, to discern what's really going on. Because that mental chatter, that mental noise is going to firstly be very distracting, but also if it's attached to really strong opinions and attitudes, then very quickly emotion will kick in. And for myself, I have a thing that I do to distinguish between emotions and feelings. So emotions, and I do this for myself, and it may be useful for you, that I associate emotions with harmful thought patterns and the result of harmful thought patterns. And I associate feelings, and I distinguish between the two for myself, that feelings come from that deepest part of me, linked to the pure qualities of the soul: love, peace, internal joy, contentment. And so you can see the difference, feelings and emotions. I just find that makes it very clear for me. So what I'm talking about here, when I'm talking about a distortion of my vision, is emotions. And those emotions are things like fear, hatred, anger. Those sort of emotions not only distort my vision
and stop me being able to see truth. But actually, I can't see much at all when I'm in the grip of those strong emotions. And you know what it's like. We don't think very clearly at all when we're in the grip of those strong emotions. And so certainly if I'm finding myself in an emotional state, in that sort of a charged state, I'm definitely not going to be able to see clearly and really be able to discern what's going on. So that's something to know. And the third thing that can really make it difficult to discern is being too filled up with things that I'm involved with, things that I'm thinking about. We touched on this last week, that if my attention is going here, there, and everywhere, then I'm not going to be able to hold attention or see clearly the thing that I need to see. I'm going to be distracted by all the other things that are pulling and holding my attention, because they might be holding my attention not for long. I jump to the next thing and I'll find that I'm in a state of great distraction. It's really not so easy to see clearly. So these are things that can really make it difficult to discern, or as Jackie mentioned, this other word, discriminate. So we mean that in a positive way, discriminate, to be able to see clearly. So to be able to do this means that I'm able to hold my attention, not be swayed by powerful attitudes and opinions that might distort, not be confused by too much going on in my mind, not be swayed and actually lost in strong emotions. So how do I do that? Because it might sound not so easy, but actually there's a part of spiritual knowledge that really helps us here. And that's the ability to detach, to step back and be able to observe from a distance. So to do this, firstly, I need this first aspect of knowledge, that I'm a soul. I'm the thinker of my thoughts. I'm not the thoughts. I'm the feeler of my feelings and emotions. I'm like an actor in this play of the world, playing my part. And when I think in this way, I can take a mental step back from everything that's going on around me, even from my own thoughts and opinions, because I'm the thinker of the thought, I'm not the thought. I can step back and observe what's going on. It gives me distance, it gives me perspective, and it allows me to see more clearly what's really going on. Take some practice. Meditation's a natural means. Raja Yoga meditation is a natural means to do this, because in Raja Yoga meditation, we're getting to know ourselves as a soul. We're understanding ourselves as a spiritual being. We're moving our attention away from the physical world and our physical identity, and also all the roles that we play in the world, the part that we play in the world. So we can view that with some detachment, and we can view that from a position of not being caught up in emotions. So detachment is such a useful thing. It doesn't mean that we don't care. It doesn't mean that we're not wanting to be involved in a solution, but it allows us to see with some clarity. And when I have this clear vision, I'm better able to really see what's going on. It gives me not only perspective, because I'm stepped back, so I'm looking, if you like, at a distance, and so I can see not only what's going on, but the implications of what's going on, it gives me the opportunity to be a little far-sighted about what's going on and think of what's going on in different ways. So I can look at it from an angle of, what it means for me, but I can also put myself in the shoes of another. And, what does this mean for another? And of course, we won't know everything that's going on inside another person, but we can certainly get some insight into, what might be happening for them. For example, if the thing that I'm involved with is somebody else's behavior, somebody else becoming really angry or upset about something, with this sort of detachment, I will find myself understanding that firstly, I'm a spiritual being, but so are they. And I can look at them in this way and understand that they are a spiritual being having a human experience as I am, but that there's something that has disturbed them, moved them away from their inner calm state. And rather than condemning them or judging them or becoming angry and caught up in emotion about what they're doing, I can view it as a distance. We did touch on this last week as well. So it's a very important thing because, often we'll get so caught up in blaming and so caught up in judging and condemning that too is going to take us on a path that will really mean that we can't see so clearly. We're caught up in making the other person the problem. And of course, when we do that, it removes our power to be able to do anything about it. If they're the problem, I can't solve them. I can really only, work on myself. So if I make them the problem, if I blame them, if I, judge them, I get caught up in those things, then I have no power in the situation at all. So when I can see clearly what's going on, to be in that state of a powerful state of being able to discern means that I can see I'm not caught up in the emotion of what's going on. I'm stable, I'm calm, I'm seeing with clear vision, undistorted vision, and it really helps me to know and do the next step, which is the next power, and that's to decide. So it helps me in the process of discerning, not only to be able to see clearly, but to know what to do. So before I take this next step of deciding, they sort of flow in together, if you like. I can see clearly what's going on, and this will help me to know then what to do. So this clear vision allows me to see not just for right now, but it helps me to see, if you like, in a far-sighted way, that I can see not just immediately the implications and ramifications of whatever's going on, but I can see, if you like, I can cast my vision to the future. And in any decision that I make, I'll be considering not just the present moment, but the impact of what this thing could mean for the future as well. And that really leads us into the next power, which is the power to decide. And so once I've discerned what's going on, once I can see very clearly what's in front of me, and I'm able to look at it with unclouded, undistorted vision, I'm able to get a 360 view, if you like, which includes also consideration of implications for the future of whatever's going on. Once I can see all of that, I can then move into the next power, which is the power to decide. And the power to decide is doing what needs to be done. So discerning helps me know what needs to be done. I can see clearly, I can see any decision that I make, I can see the possible implications of it, I can see how it will affect me and other people as well, situations. And of course, we're not mind readers, so we may not be able to know everything that will happen, but we're able to make a very well considered decision based on all the information that we have and affected by distortion of truth that as we've mentioned just before. So I can see what's going on. I'm able to know, start to know, to consider and work out what needs to be done in this situation. And I'm giving consideration to not just myself, but everybody else and everything else that's involved, and not just right now, but looking into the future. What's the possibilities for the future, making any decision. And so you can see how when I apply power in that way, that I'm really tapping into my inner wisdom that we talked about last week with the power to withdraw, tapping in and using my inner wisdom. So when I start to move into the power to decide, this is actually when I'm going to do something. And I've seen clearly, I know what to do. But if I don't bring this power to decide into my life, I can see very clearly what's going on. I can discern what's going on. I can know what to do. But without the power to decide, I can know and I can see and I can know and I can see forever onwards. But I actually never do it. So the power to decide is like I'm taking that step of courage. I'm taking responsibility for the actions that I'm going to and the decision that I'm putting in play. I'm understanding that there will be consequences of whatever I do, and I'm taking responsibility for those consequences, and I'm actually taking the step. Now, for some, that is a very difficult thing to do. And I might find that I'm absolutely caught up on the thinking stage and the considering stage and coming back and thinking again and again and again, but not actually doing. And we call it procrastination. So procrastination means that I'm coming back and I'm thinking about it again. I'm looking at it from all angles. It's not a bad thing to do that, to make a well-considered decision, but if I never take the step, then it's procrastination. I'm stuck. Often I will find that I'm hesitating to take that step because I'm fearful of the consequence of my action. I'm unwilling to take responsibility. And so I will hesitate. And, there's a saying, he who hesitates is lost. There's certainly great value in a pause to consider before I rush into anything. And I think sometimes, and I can certainly speak for myself here, that the pause is something that's a useful thing, because to rush in, I may not have considered all the implications. I might not have all the information, and the pause allows me to gather that information and really just put a little bit more perspective. So it can be very useful to pause, but the power to decide, if I don't eventually make a decision, I'm going to be stuck in the thinking and not doing. And if I think and think and think and never do, then I'm stuck in the one place. I will never move forward. So when I decide, taking that responsibility, with the understanding that I'm making the best, because I've already discerned, I'm making the best possible decision I can make with everything I know now. I've taken the time to discern. I've ensured that I'm not being swayed and influenced by attitudes and opinions and emotions and cluttered up mind. And I take the step. I make the decision and I do it. Now, an important aspect to this when I do it is that this is where the philosophy and, another aspect of Brahma Kumaris knowledge is the philosophy of karma and understanding the law of karma. Karma simply means action. And when I start to understand karma, I start to understand that what I put out, I will get a return. So it's quite a simple law or philosophy, but it can have a very complex application. So when I make a decision and I actually do something, there'll be a return of whatever it is that I do. So if I'm putting something out with a very positive intent and, well thought out, well considered decision, I will get a positive return for that. But sometimes it'll be that I've missed something or, I haven't had all the information I needed and I may have rushed into a decision. Sometimes I'll simply make the wrong decision and I'll act in a way that perhaps doesn't have the best result for me and for other people. So in taking this step, it's important that I firstly have a good intent, that I'm taking this step with a wish that everybody involved and everything involved will benefit from whatever I'm doing now, that there's a positive intent behind what I'm doing, that it will be good for all, positive for all, a good outcome for all. So that's one thing. But also the understanding that sometimes I won't get it completely right. And there may be even an unforeseen consequence that I hadn't thought of, and that I'm willing to deal with that, knowing that, my heart is pure, that I'm hoping for the best for everyone. That will help to and certainly influence the decision. But in taking the responsibility for the step is understanding that if that happens, that there is something unforeseen or something unknown that isn't a positive result, that I will deal with that in a positive way when it comes. And I'm willing to take a well-considered step, knowing that sometimes, I'll have to deal with the wash up of that. That's taking responsibility. And sometimes we don't want to do that. We just want to let somebody else take the bold step, somebody else take responsibility. And when other people take responsibility and they get it wrong, it's very easy if we just want to sit back and be the one that never does anything. It's very easy for us to point the finger and say, oh, well, see, they did it. See, they got it wrong. And, oh, look, they shouldn't have done that, or, they should have done this differently. But if we're the one that always is the person in the back stalls observing life in that way, which is not an accurate sort of an accurate way to use the power of observation, we will never progress, actually. So we have to be willing to take the step. We have to be willing to take the responsibility, the consequences of our actions, and take that step. And of course, it takes courage. And, we'll also learn from our experience, because when we take a step and if there's something that doesn't turn out so well, then rather than beating ourselves up about that and thinking, well, I shouldn't have done that, I should have done something different, such a waste of time to think that way, so much better to take the learning, take the experience and grow, so that next time something happens, I'll have this growth experience that will help me to discern, to see, and to decide in an even better way moving forward. So these powers really help us in a practical way in our life. And, you know, when the more clearly we can see what's going on, the more we keep our vision pure on what's going on, the more we step back and observe rather than getting caught up in situations, the clearer our vision will be, our internal vision, the better our decisions will be. And we'll find that we feel empowered, that we're able to take steps that improve our life. We're able to take steps that will be beneficial for everybody. And it's, you know, this word empowerment is used a lot, that we can't empower anybody else really, but we can empower ourselves. So by practicing these two powers, it will empower me to be able to continue to move forward with taking time to see and to know and then to decide. So that's pretty much what I wanted to mention on these two powers. So Jackie, I'm wondering if you have any comment to make on that, or perhaps if there's any comments or questions from participants.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Angie. I was really enjoying the way you unpacked that. And, you know, I was reminded of the SOS that we use in positive thinking. And I thought the stop is withdrawing. And the O is observing. And what we're observing is how I'm reacting to this. Uh-oh, I'm getting irritated. Uh-oh, I'm getting angry. And then the S is to decide what I do about it. It's quite good, isn't it? The SOS. So, and looking at and also enjoying what you were saying about how we point the finger, how we were very reluctant to take responsibility, but seeing how we're deceived in the aspect of how we steer or how we step forward, how we respond to the situation. We're deceived by our own anger or our own irritation or our own lack of self-respect and so on. How I am observing how am I responding to this situation? I was enjoying that coming out of your discussion.
And I think that's such an interesting thing, this deception, because it's been, you know, these reactions have been with us for such a long time that they feel quite normal to us, but actually they're anything but normal. They're so damaging, and so this using SOS is great because I can, as you say, observe myself. You know, one of the way applications of these powers that it's challenging, but I think it's so worthwhile. And this is something I experiment with quite a lot actually, is in any given situation to look at the situation and ask myself the question, what can I change in me to improve this situation? Because it's so easy to look at the situation and pin it all on somebody else, the problem on somebody else. But in any given issue, what can I change in me? And Jackie, as you say, you know, if I'm able to observe myself and see that there's anger happening or fear or whatever it might be, that might be the thing that I'm going to take charge of and change. But it does take great courage, I think, to be able to take that step and 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 really great honesty to look inside myself and be willing to see what's in there. It's not so pretty to see these things, and it's yeah, it's sometimes the deception is to distract us so we don't have to look inside.
But, you know, I think we also said this last week too, Angie, this simple practice that we have in Raj Yoga meditation, the very first lesson, I am a peaceful soul. So in a moment of deep disturbance, when I'm feeling very angry, if I'm have this affirmation, I'm a peaceful soul, I'm a peaceful soul, I'm a peaceful soul, because it's a truth. And we think it's sometimes, maybe we think it's too simple to be true. Can it be true? But I know from my own experience, and I'm sure you do too, that when I feel like that, I've practiced in my meditation when there are no challenges, but I'm practicing I'm a peaceful soul, and I go into that feeling of the peaceful soul. Anthony talks about going deeply inside. And what do you think about going deeply inside? It's to emerge the feeling of peace.
Mm. Because it's there. It's part of us, and it's an eternal part of us. It's always there, but it becomes obscured with, if I'm not feeling a peaceful soul, if I'm disturbed, if I'm angry, um, then when I tell myself I'm a peaceful soul, sometimes it's a little bit hard to convince myself of that. So I really need to have experienced it to convince myself it's true. And the more I do that, and of course, meditation is the means, such a natural means to experience myself as a peaceful soul. The more I do that, the more I'll convince myself. So at that time of anger, when I tell myself I'm a peaceful soul, there's actually a chance I'll believe it, because, as you say, it's our truth. But I need to experience it. Um, Otherwise, I'll tell myself that, but it won't have that deep meaning. But once I've experienced it, once experienced, never forgotten. So once I've experienced myself as a peaceful soul, if I've experienced in meditation, or if I've experienced it even in action, then it's a truth that I know, and I can't unknow it once I know it. So that will be a catalyst for when I become angry.
Mm. Even the Om Shanti can be a helpful affirmation. Uh, I remember when there was a couple who were doing the course, and one of the couple got a bit irritated by something, and the other one said, "Oh, what happened to Om Shanti then?" But it is true, because it does pull you up internally when you observe yourself. Yeah, because the stepping back and observing is about observing your own reaction to a situation, isn't it?
Absolutely. You know,
And your own attitude, I suppose.
well, and our attitude is something that, it's formed over time. So, often that will be a matter of chipping away at the way we're perceiving things, and gradually, the more I think of myself as a peaceful soul, gradually, I'll find my attitude will change, and really, I think one of the things that often happens is when we really start to not just think I'm a peaceful soul, and not just experience it, but absolutely believe it, and it really becomes a truth for us, because it is a truth, but we really start to, it becomes part of our life once again,
Mm.
is that we'll start to view the whole world differently. And when I really integrate this into my life, and my way of living, uh, then I'm looking outward, seeing other peaceful souls, rather than seeing the angry person in front of me. I see the peaceful soul who's experiencing anger, and it's a very different thing. So I don't get so caught up or affected by their anger. I know they're a peaceful soul, but something's disturbed them.
Mm.
That's temporary.
Mm. Yeah.
They're eternally a peaceful soul. I just wanted to share a funny story. You mentioned about the couple. When I first came to know this knowledge, um, my son was about 18, and I used to go home and tell him everything I'd learnt in the course, and yeah, I'm a peaceful soul now. I'm a peaceful soul. And it was a great checking thing to tell him that, because he would pull me up all the time. I thought you said you were a peaceful soul. when I used to lose my cool. And that was great checking for me because, and you know, I think that's, it's, you know, when we decide to take action, you know, just coming back to this power to decide for a moment, taking action is such a bold step to tell somebody else, you know, I'm practicing, I'm a peaceful soul. Because if I just keep it to myself and nobody
Yeah.
knows, there's nobody who's ever going to challenge me on that. But when I share it,
Mm-hmm.
then there's a checking that goes on, and actually I'm accountable for my actions. So sometimes just to share something like that can be a very bold move to say, well, I'm practicing being a peaceful soul. Don't just keep it to yourself. Tell someone. Then they're going to hold you to account, and that's a very good checking point.
Yeah.
As long as you don't get angry when they say it to you.
You know, it intrigues me too, because this peace and that I'm a peaceful soul, a point of light, this whole use of light, and we superficially, we know that light overcomes darkness, but we use the symbol of light such a lot in Brahma Kumaris. But getting back to this peaceful bit, we also emphasize it's the first lesson. We say that this is what you should practice. And then in Anthony's reflection, he says, when I go deeply into this peace and I realize or experience it, I respect myself. And then he says that, and from peace comes love for myself out of that respect. Now, this is a huge return for a very simple kind of idea. I'm a peaceful soul. Has it been your experience?
You know, I'm really, I'm reminded, you know, yesterday was Mother's Day, and I was really touched yesterday. We had a little celebration here, you know, with the Brahmin gathering, and we had a lot of mothers, and it was a very beautiful gathering. But I was really touched by uh, this aspect, actually, of peace leading to love, because when I come back into my understanding of myself as a peaceful being, excuse me, uh, it's the ultimate self-respect, and to know myself as a being of peace and to experience myself and believe myself to be a being of peace means that I'm able to look at the world through a different lens, but I'm able to experience my whole life in a different way. And the lack of peace in our life really, over time, I feel that it's moved us away from love. When we lose our peace, you know, we become needy and grasping. And so, along with looking for things that make us feel good, we're also looking for things that fulfill us. And love is one of the deepest aspects that we have. We, you know, we've we experience love. We all know it. I don't have to explain what love is. We know what it is. We've all experienced love in different ways, but internal love, when I really know myself to be a being of love, then I'm not needy on love from the outside, from other people or relationships. I am love. And and for me, it absolutely links to peace, that you can't sort of have one without the other. And this combination of peace and love internally, when I'm filled up with those qualities, then self-respect is the natural byproduct of that, that everything I do is going to be based on my state of peace and my state of love for the self, which isn't like a narcissistic or a selfish type of love, but it's an absolute self-respect. And so I will think things, feel things, and do things that perpetrate and increase that love. I won't do things that move me away. So my decision making is driven by these things, by both things actually, peace and love. I will do things that increase peace and love, because actually these two qualities are completely unlimited, and that's a really interesting aspect of our spiritual self. Our physical self is very limited. You know, I can't change my skin color. Well, maybe I can, but only in a very limited way. I can't change my height. I can't, I can't turn the clock back on my my aging skin or those sort of things. But when it comes to these internal qualities of the soul, there's no limit to how much peace or how much love I can hold, or I can experience, or I can give out. They're an untapped or an unlimited resource, if you like. Does it make some sense?
Yes, it does. It does. Do you know, Angie, I'm not, I hope this is a good example, but Sally referred to this a few weeks ago, and it reminded me of this aspect of when my attitude is so clean that peace and love would just be my own experience and coming across to others like that. And so I would look at people without thinking, because there would be no prejudice or judgment. So she told the story of when the founder of the organization was in his room, and an intruder came in with the intention of taking his life, if you like. A murderer had been hired for this job. And he looked at, and the founder looked at him with no judgment or no observation of his external, oh, he's holding a knife, his external appearance. So he had that total vision, imagine that, of kind of just love was there. And he used a few expressions which were quite loving expressions. And this person, they found him outside sobbing his heart out. Now you think, what happened there? This person had an intention that he was hired to do, and suddenly something penetrated so deeply in him, some appreciation of him, some recognition of him, some respect of him, went so deeply, because of course the founder had practiced that for a long time, that he just broke down. So it was a touching story and reminded me of that, of how the soul, even though he was there for another purpose, the soul caught the respect that was being shown to him, because there was some genuineness in it that was so powerful. And I don't know if it's relevant, but I was thinking of it at the time, how the soul is so vulnerable.
And think of that situation, because I was touched by that story too when Sally told, and think of the state of Father Brahma at that time, absolute lack of fear. And because when there's fear, that love and fear, they don't really coexist so well together, or they don't really coexist. So absolute absence of fear. So and fear is such a manifest thing in the world these days, So think of that where there's fear, it suppresses love. But when there's love, it eliminates fear. And imagine what the world would be like if we were all able to do that, to do what he did, in maybe not in such an extreme situation, but we face lesser situations. We all do every day. And you mentioned things like prejudice, that often are vision on another is coloured by our prejudice, by judgment, by some feeling that this person has done the wrong thing or is the wrong thing and should be punished. And so these are the sort of things that we hold in our vision of the other person. It doesn't allow love, and often it perpetrates fear, because we feel like, when we judge or discriminate in that wrong way, then there's a difference between them and us, and that difference can perpetrate fear. But actually, if we can take our vision deeper, and this comes back to the power to discern, as you said before, Jackie, we use this image of light as a being of light. So if I can leapfrog, the vision of those really limited, harmful things that we see, and leapfrog my vision beyond those things to the light within that one, then love's possible. And to be imagine if that's what I'm holding in my vision of the other, they can't help but feel it.
Because otherwise you're identifying with their purpose. But if you're not identifying with their purpose at all, you step back from what's going on there and observing yourself. It's been wonderful, Angie. It's been a very lovely discussion. And would you feel like leading us for a reflection to finish the evening?
I do this consciously. Each time I do this, I become more and more practiced. It becomes easier for me every time I decide to meditate. I turn my attention inward. And as I do, I visualize a beautiful field, sweeping green field, stretching into the distance. Beautiful green field, topped by a sparkling blue sky. This image that I'm visualizing is like the field of my mind. Open space. Let me check the field of my mind. Is it free and clear? Or is there clutter? Is there rubbish? Is my mind a minefield of judgment and disturbance? Let me clear the field of my mind and allow it to become clear and clean and free. Beautiful green expanse of field, topped by a sparkling blue sky, clean and clear and free. I'm seeing with my mind's eye, visualizing. And as I do this, I notice that when it's like this, the field of my mind, free and clear and clean, I can see over a great distance. My vision is not disturbed or distorted. There is clarity. I am far-sighted. Free and clean and clear. When my mind is like this, I can see very clearly the truth of situations in front of me. I can see very clearly what's really going on because I'm free and clear and clean inside. I'm not influenced. I can see, and holding that clear vision, I'm able to know what to do. I know what to do because I can see from a distance, at a distance. And from here, I'm able to take that step of courage and determination to do what needs to be done, making a conscious choice, doing something and moving forward. Trusting myself, believing in myself, and even if my decision proves to be one that is not completely of benefit, with understanding and love for the self, I know that I've done the best I could do with what I knew. I'm willing to take the learning and keep moving forward. Let me use these powers in this way to discern, to decide, to see, to know, to do.